Happy Tuesday morning to everyone. And again, welcome to another episode of the Kitchings Table. We are so glad to be with you this morning to bring you one more episode of things we have found out between last time we met and the last time we spoke. And today we hope that this information and what we bring to you today will be very helpful and truly insightful because when I found out about a lady, a black lady who is got a business that's doing something phenomenal. I just had to bring it to you, our listeners. Joining me, as always, my co-host Ronleen Kennedy. Good morning, Ronleen.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm doing very well this morning. So good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Listen,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you for finding that article because, oh my goodness, that just brought back so much joy. I have something sitting on my shelf and I can't wait to put that in existence. It was supposed to be in existence 5 years ago. However, listening to her today and some things that remember our guest, Sorella Perry.
Mm-hmm.
Based on some of the things that we talked about years ago, I'm ready for it to come in fruition. So thank you so much for bringing that to the forefront because that was the motivation I needed.
Well, anytime we can motivate, especially when we're internally inside the family that can motivate one another, then that's a good thing and a plus. So you are truly welcome. And I was just blown away when I saw this because it's not something that we know of, see, hear about, have any knowledge of at any particular point in time because it's so under the radar. I mean, this is sub radar level stuff that we're talking about today because unless you are in that particular industry or unless you're in that particular state or unless someone passed along this information, you may not know about it. And thankfully, it was put out in a place where I found out about it. And I'm grateful to be on Twitter now because a lot of information passes through Twitter. It's almost like a department store. What Twitter is, there's so many different things going on from A to Z. But today our topic is building a community, and this has to do with the housing industry, the housing industry in America. And for Black people, it has always been a challenge from being redlined as to whether or not you can get a loan to get a home, to being told you can't live in certain communities, from being told that you are just not welcome in certain communities. You name the scenario, these are some of the things that have happened to Black people over time. However, when we finish today, we hope that the information we impart on those who are watching and listening here on Awesome Radio 106.9 WBISLP will have a different viewpoint. So let me start by saying that there are 378,000 378,000 plus home builder businesses in the United States as of 2023. 378,000 plus home builder businesses. Now, that may not be people who construct homes, but then again, it might. It did not give me the information when I went on Wikipedia. But it did say this that the home building industry in the United States consists of several large public residential construction companies. And I have identified the top 10 companies. So if these companies are building homes, whether they are large developments, whether they're taking 10 acres of land and developing them, no matter what the size of the property is, if someone is going to build a home on them, then they're considered a home builder business or a residential construction company. And most of the companies, as it says, except in the Northeast, are privately financed builders, but you do have major players. And when we talk about the major players, we've probably seen some of them as we've driven around some of the communities where we live and seen the signs as you see people are trying to sell homes and make that happen in certain communities. So it's interesting to see that some of the names that we'll share with you today have large residential builders associated with them. And the states where we will find the highest number of businesses who match this particular category are California with 60,000 plus, New York with 38,000 plus, and Florida with 36,000 plus. And they said these are the states with the most number of home builder businesses in the United States. So when we think about homes and we think about communities, Ronley, when we say the word neighborhoods, communities, residential areas, what comes to mind for you?
Just what you're saying, whole community. I think of the different shopping malls where they can come in and shop. I think of the grocery stores. I think of convenience stores. I think of churches. I think of everything that a neighborhood would need in order to function into a community, in order to really to be able to call it a community. There should be a library nearby. There should be all types of resources to run that community. So the utility company, it needs to be nearby. um, Other businesses needs to be nearby, as well as insurance companies and things like that.
Well, when we talk about communities, see, we when we break that down, so we have a community, and then we have the residential areas in that community. And the community can be a larger part of a major city or a small city, small town, metropolitan town. It doesn't matter. That kind of constitutes the community. And then when we talk about the residential areas inside of those communities and what they look like, you see subdivisions. And I guess that was the other thing, residential communities, subdivisions,
Play,
and go ahead.
playgrounds, parks.
That all constitutes in this day and time. You'll see a park and a playground in some of the subdivisions. That was not the case when we were growing up. A park and a playground was community property, community space, basically run and operated by the city. So you lived in a community and you played or you went to that particular playground or park. Not so much nowadays, because you'll find they have a small playground, a small community building. They have a swimming pool that facilitates that residential or subdivision area. So it's interesting just to see the subdivisions as you ride around town. Some are gated, some are not gated, and we're going to talk about those. And I've always found it fascinating to see the names of some of the subdivisions or residential communities, because they take on such distinct and unique names. And some of them may be somewhat offensive to Black people in particular, especially those areas or residential areas called plantation. And it's kind of ironic if a Black person lives in a subdivision and it's called a plantation. It's like, you
Yeah,
think
you feel
about
insulted.
you, you think about that word and it, what it goes back to over 100 plus years ago. It's like, do I want to buy a house on the plantation? But I don't think it's meant from that connotation, but still,
I don't want to be reminded of it. That's
right. Exactly.
so
Exactly.
that's it for me. I don't want to be reminded of it. And as a matter of fact, for those that live in those type subdivisions, no matter how close we were, I find out we're not close anymore. And it's just probably because of that. I just don't want to be reminded of
Especially if that community is a gated community. So now you
it.
live on the
With the
plantation.
water, with the
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
I
in a
think
gated
that,
community.
yeah, you know what? I got to go back and repent because that is probably it, Earl. I never thought about it that way, but yeah, it's a gated community. It's the plantation that they
Right,
live, you know,
right, right.
and we were good friends before they moved into those subdivisions. It had nothing, so that's it. It's the reminder. So yeah, and the waterfront, all of that. Yeah, so I
Yeah,
have to go back and pick up those relationships
yeah.
and tell them
It's
I'm sorry.
so you got that, and then of course with a gated community, you have the security building that will allow you in if you're not a resident, and you have to get checked in, and you have to prove who you are, and you have to let them know where you're going and things of that nature, and be approved to come on the property. Otherwise, you won't be coming in, and if you get a little sideways with it, you're going to see some flashing blue lights come up and find out, well, what's the problem here? And
Yeah.
you're going to be you're going to be turned away and politely asked to move along, and not create a problem here. Otherwise, and depending on what area you're in, you might not even be asked properly. You might just be accosted simply because.
Oh my goodness.
Simply
Okay.
because.
See, and okay, yes. Thank you for bringing that to my light.
Yeah. So when we talk about home builders, and as I said, there are.
And let me stop you right there. If we
Okay.
have a time at the end of the story, at the end of this show, I want to tell you what I thought about because this month is also boat awareness month or something contributing to boats. So I thought about you, but we could talk about that later. But remind me about that if we can.
Okay. So when we talk about the home builders and who they are and what they do, and what type of business they are, I put down the top 10 home builders in America, and they are ranked by the number of closings as of 2021. So total closings in 2021, and then the revenue that these companies generate is phenomenal. So at number 10 is LGI Homes. They had 10,442 closings in 2021. Century Communities had 10,008. Clayton Properties had 10,009. Meritage Home Corporation had 12,800. KB Homes had 13. I've seen a KB Home uh, subdivision here in Jacksonville, 13,472. Taylor Morrison at 13, right at 13.7. NVR. So watch this jump now. We were at 13.7 at number 5. Number 5, we're going to number 4. It went from 13.7 to 21.5 closings.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next one is Pulte Homes. I'm sure we've all seen a Pulte subdivision or signs, 28.8. Then we go to Lennar Corporation. Watch this jump, 28.8, right almost at 29.9 to 59.8 total
Okay.
closings. Now, understand that these are homes that are being built, or homes that they built and maybe they went back to them to close, but I'm thinking that these are homes that were built. So
Mm-hmm.
that was Lennar Corporation, but then the number one home builder in America with 81,981 closings in 2021, DB Horton Company. And their gross revenue was $27.9 billion.
Yes, DR Horton is, you see those subdivisions everywhere you're out. You're right about that.
Right.
Yes.
And when I looked at the revenue, at first I thought it was millions. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. If you got 81,000 closings, um,
Then that means
Gee,
everyone has a home that you should know, right?
well, I'm talking about the money. If I was looking at it as gross revenue in millions, I'm like, that can't be millions because that wouldn't make any sense. Because if one home costs on an average $200,000, you multiply 200 times 81,000. That's a lot more than um, 27.9 million. So it is probably billion. I would think it's billion, but the fact that these companies are building this many homes and they're generating this kind of revenue, that is a lot. You're talking about almost 82,000 homes, and you look at an average. I mean, and when you ride around to these subdivisions now, it's always been an interesting thing, and my concept has always been this: you ride to a subdivision, a newly built subdivision, depending on where that subdivision is, and there will be a sign that tells you, "Hey, this is the ABC, community homes starting at." That's the thing I like. Homes starting at. Now, depending on where that subdivision is, and depending on, I'll just put it this way, whether or not they are wanting you to be in that subdivision or not. I'll put it politely. But they will use the cost of the home as a deterring factor for people to even consider moving into those subdivisions. So if you got a subdivision that's coming up and it says homes starting in the low 300s. Now, for all of us who took math, we know that low 300s is anything less than $350,000.
Mm-hmm.
Please understand what I'm saying now. Anything less than 350. We were taught that, above 350 is high, under 350 is low. You can get lower than that. You can say, well, 325, 310, the low 300s. So let's just say it's 310,000 on an average, low 300s. Then there's some that says, well, high 200s. Well, that could be anywhere from 250 to 290. Those numbers, just being on those signs, will either embrace or deter homeowners for wanting to build a home in those specific areas. Because if you don't have the income to build a $300,000 home and pay for that $300,000 home, even on a 30-year mortgage, there's no need for you to look in that subdivision.
Correct.
Now, and I would say this, that a $300,000 home would probably require income at a minimum, and I mean on the very low end, somewhere around 80 to $100,000 in income. If you're making six-figure incomes, getting a $300,000 home probably won't be a stretch for you. Your mortgage might be higher than you want it to be, depending on what you put down, but you don't have to worry about not being able to afford a home in that subdivision. Whereas when they tell you 200,000, high mid 200, high 200, that might be a little bit more feasible. But when you go to some subdivisions and they have the signs and it says homes starting at $500,000, no, we won't be moving into that subdivision if we don't have that kind of income, because you're talking about a mortgage amount on a 30-year mortgage. That's going to be quite a chunk. And if you don't have a chunk in your income, you're not going to be in that home very long. So I've always seen that as a deterrent, depending on what subdivisions there are. And knowing that for many average Black people in middle income salaries, uh, a husband and a wife with two incomes that could get to $100,000, it could be $125,000, that could get you into that mid 200 to low 300 home, possibly, depending on what other expenses you may have. But beyond that, no. And when you look at the people who live in homes like that. I mean, a $300,000 home, in my opinion, Ronline, requires a six-figure income, hands down. If you don't have a six-figure income, $300,000 is just going to be a stretch. And
Mhm.
the higher the cost of the home, the nicer it is.
Supposedly, that's the hope.
I will hope if I got a $300,000 home, I got a 4 bedroom, 3 bath with a large kitchen area and a large living. You want your living areas to be large. I don't really need a living room. Once upon a time, living rooms were the place that you needed to entertain people. It's like nowadays, man, your living room could be a 10 by 10, and who would care? Because you're gonna spend most of your time in your den and your kitchen, and
Mhm.
that's where you want to be. So depending on what it is, but having those extra bathrooms, and I do mean full bathrooms. I'm not talking about a half a
Right.
bathroom or a piece of bathroom. I'm talking about full bathrooms, uh, and then of course the master bath. But when we look at homes or a 5 bedroom, 4 bath home, I mean that's not too far out. And then you go from a single car garage to a 3 car garage.
Mhm.
So all these things add up to those homes, and I'm going to give you some statistics on the square footage on the average home. But that's always been my thought when I see these subdivisions with these signs and what the prices of the homes are. It's an outward deterrent to cause you not to want to consider moving in those areas if you don't have the income to pay that mortgage. What do you think?
Well, you're right about that. When I was a real estate agent, that was the first thing you wanted to do was to qualify your buyer. So if they did not have the income, they didn't have passive income coming in, you didn't go try to bother with them, taking them to places where you knew that the decline was coming. You
Right.
want take them to places to where you knew that their income can handle it. And then after I became a well before I became a real estate agent, I was a loan originator. So to come in, when people come in and they sit their whole business out as far as, what they have coming in. What I found was as I was transitioning from the originator over into the housing counseling, because the housing market was supposedly going up, but we know the big thing happened with the foreclosure. So my home buyer experience quickly transitioned over into how to help people save their homes, how to help them get through the forbearance, how to help them get through foreclosure, and how to prevent it, that kind of thing. And so it was amazing to me of what was used in order for them to get into a home to begin with. And then, like you said, once that it was discovered that that income really was never there to begin with, being in that home became a struggle.
Those are the factors that we have to consider, and I think it's even more interesting in this day and time where people are either renting homes or continuing to be in apartments. But when you see apartment rents being anywhere from $800 to $1,200 a month, when you see the rental on a home being $1,200 a month, you ask yourself, well, if they could pay that, why can't they just have that situation for a mortgage where they're buying the home? But other circumstances prevent that, so they have to go the rental route. And what I discovered in the article we're going to talk about in the second half of the show today is there's a new way to, well, maybe not so much new, but this is being utilized in a different way uh, when we talk about, leasing property. But let me just give you some statistics. According to Statista, about homes. So the medium size of a new single family home that they published in 2020 was uh, right at 2,333 square feet, which is not a small home at all. It's a nice size home. But for a luxury home, the average size of a single family luxury home was 3,247 square feet. So that's about 1,000 square feet more. And then it says the average size of an attached home was 1,859 square feet. Now, I know some people might say, well, what the heck is an attached home? Well, that's the guest house, if you will, or that's that extra rooms or extra footage that you added to the house, so it's a little bit larger than what you're accustomed to. So 2,300 is the medium size for a single family, and then 3,200 is the average size for a luxury home. And again, keep in mind average, average size for the luxury home, pretty much the norm for the median sized single family home. And then we go from there to talk about a gated community. And again, as it's defined here on Wikipedia, is a form of residential community or housing estate. Now, let's stop right there. So we talked about the names of residential areas or subdivisions. And again, words can determine and differentiate things in such a way that it lets you know who and where you are. So you live in a subdivision, right? I live in a residential area. You live in a subdivision. I live in a residential area. But my friend lives in an estate area.
Mm.
And that estate area, normally a gated community, we're talking about large homes. We're talking about $1 million plus homes in an estate community. And it says that contain these areas contain strictly controlled entrances, strictly, strictly controlled entrances, which means there's that security uh, facility, that's security house there. When you come in, there's a gate. There are really two gates, one for visitors and one for residents. So residents have a little scanning bar on their windows and they can just go through and the gate will raise up. But if you don't have that, you don't live there, you got to check in. So they have control entrances for pedestrians, bicycles, and automobiles. Um, and normally you have some type of, as they said, some kind of type of closed perimeter, either with fencing or with shrubbery or with walls or a combination of the three. And that's what your gated community will look like. It's an contained, enclosed area. And the larger, it is, uh, the more structure you will see to contain it. Now, granted, that containment may be just across the front because when you go down the sides, it could be protected by wooded areas, so you don't need so much uh, to build fencing and walls there. And then, Ronline, I found out as of 2012, because they stopped really looking into this statistics, there were 10 million residents who were part of gated communities in America. 10 million residents as of 2012 now. So that's 11 years ago. So let's just say if that's doubled, then there are 20 million residential units in gated communities. And that's just an interesting thought. That's just an interesting thought because the gated communities, as prestigious as they are not abundant. You have communities, you have residential areas, and you have these gated communities. So you can have 4 or 5 residential areas, and before you see one gated community. And again, the value of homes between the two is significant,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of the way things have been going here over the last few years. And one last thing before I let you have weigh in here. in going to Picasso.com website, when we talk about a custom, now here's the other part, Ron Lee, custom home, custom home, custom luxury home. So when like D.L. Horton and D.B. Horton and companies like that build homes, they have, it's kind of like a cookie cutter. You see that same kind of house replicated throughout the community. It might be a different front, a different paint job, but it's kind of replicated. And when you see these communities where homes are built uh, and they're less than 10 feet apart from your house to my house on the side, it's like, man, you could just reach out and touch your neighbor because you're just that close. But a custom luxury home, custom or luxury home, they're one and the same. They normally cost anywhere from $200 to $500 per square foot. 200 to $500 per square foot. So if your home is 3,000, let's just say 4,000 square feet times the high end at $500, that's a what price home? $2 million home.
Yeah, so thereabout.
And what they say is, I love the way they term things. Generally speaking, we're not gonna give you the very very high end because of course it could be higher than that depending on where you live. You go up north and that 200 to 500 could be 500 to 1,000 per square foot. But that's what they say, and it says that labor typically makes up 40% of the cost. Well, labor's gonna always be that much no matter what, because even when you go get your car fixed, the parts have no bearing on the cost for labor. So those are just some of the statistics I found.
Mhm. Interesting.
Okay. Now, when we start talking about people who look like you and me,
Okay.
uh, the population of Black America as of 2019 was said to be right at about 42 million people. Of the
Yeah.
330 million Americans, about 42 million are Black.
Okay. Let's hold that thought and let's do our station identification.
No problem. This is the Kitchings Table, heard every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. on WBISLP 106.9 FM. You can catch us on other platforms on social media, YouTube, Facebook Live, Roku TV, and GPAC 23. Thank you very much, Awesome Radio, WBISLP 106.9 FM, for allowing us to bring the world the Kitchings Table every Tuesday morning. Ronleen, so you wanted me to hold that point, but when we talk about the number of Black people who live in America, and I said it was about 42 million people, how many homeowners would you guess Black America constitutes as of 2019? Homeowners now, homeowners, not renters, homeowners.
I know that number is very low since the turn of what the events have happened. I'm not sure exactly what that percentage would be now. I know that a lot of people now, they've gotten into the the real estate market, trying to learn how to become a homeowner again if they ever became one. So, and then there's a lot of rent to own programs and things like that. I do know, like with the subdivisions, what was happening is that the different companies would come in and they would purchase a lot of those homes and then rent them back out. So yeah, I don't know that percentage these days.
Okay, so 42 million Black people,
Mhm.
6,457,000 are homeowners,
Okay.
which constitutes about 16% of that 42 million.
Mm.
16% of Black America owns a home. 16%.
Yes, and I do know, and that's probably one of those initiatives that's been going on out here, as in to get those numbers up. And as we were discussing a couple of weeks ago, the people that are like in our city, where um, I can't call it his name right now, but he has gotten into the home initiative of trying to bring homeowners to the front. Wealth Watchers is here, and they're doing the same thing. So they're trying to change the game to make sure that more African Americans can become homeowners rather than the lease to own or rent to own type thing, to wherein they actually can take over a mortgage and be able to afford a mortgage.
Right. Which brings us to our highlight of our show today. And that would be a young Black female entrepreneur by the name of Pam Brown Courtney. And why do we highlight Miss Pam Brown Courtney? Because she has built a 51 home community in Arkansas named by the name of Covenant Cove. Covenant Cove. And it says that she decided to do this because she went someplace to buy a home and she was mistreated. And she felt that she was not going to let it rest there. So she found a way to find the financing. And she's been building these homes in Little Rock, Arkansas. Uh, and she is becoming quite the entrepreneur, real estate developer, and investor in property. And when I saw this, I thought it was quite interesting because to have a multi-million dollar real estate business and consulting business, and you're building homes, you're not having some other company to build for you. You're actually the builder, which means you find the subcontractors to work for you and build these homes. Someone has to have the blueprints for you to follow. So she is doing this, and she started doing this um, around 2019, 2020. And when you, if you go online to, or you look up her information and you see these homes, you will see some very well, what they look very well constructed homes, very well landscaped. The community is very well laid out. And this is the path that she is on to make a difference in a state like Arkansas, where the income for a lot of Black Americans is probably on an average, not as high as it might be in some other places, but she is making this effort. And I'm sure each day she is growing her business to not just be in Arkansas, but to find property wherever she can find it and start building these type of communities throughout this country. So what would you have to add to this, Ron Lee?
Listen, I took the time after you told me about her. I took the time to find her, and I clicked on videos after I searched her name. I came across a video on YouTube with named Gems and Gents. And when I took the time to look at that video, I learned so much about her life and how she got started and the nuggets that she dropped, as in to tell you how to get started and to network you with people if you want to do the same thing, to be able to do that. But she also said, you have to do your homework, you have to start somewhere, and how she got started. is at the age of 16. She was dating this guy, and his mother, the guy's mother, was in real estate. She had a full-time job. Was a manager over 400 people, but her her real estate properties is what kept her going. And she said what she did was she became a volunteer. She saw where she can help this lady. And so what she did was she started driving her and her people around to look at properties. And after that, she started managing her invoices. And then after that, the lady said, listen, I'm going to teach you everything I know. And that's what she did. And when she got ready to purchase her first car, she saved up money to purchase her first car. And Earl, she said she thought the lady was going to be so excited about her purchasing her first car. And she said, she was like, wait a minute, you're not excited about me purchasing my first car? She said, no, you need to be, if you can purchase a car, you need to be purchasing your first property. And she has that property to this day, and she's over 60 years old now. So, to how she got started in those humble beginnings, I just thought that was phenomenal. I can't hear you.
Her enterprise is phenomenal in itself simply because she has a 34-acre land development that she is I'm sorry, not 34 acres, I'm sorry, that's someone else, but in her property where this Covenant Cove is in Little Rock, Arkansas, she's created probably what's going to be one particular way for people to own homes going forward is called lease lease communities, or a for lease community. And I had to look that up because I had never heard of something like that, a for lease community. I know what leasing a car means. I know what leasing something means. And I was like, okay, I wonder if that means the same thing for this home. So when I looked it up, a land lease community refers to residents who can lease the home, but they can't own the property that is owned,
Mm-hmm.
which, depending on what you're trying to do, may not be the worst way, especially when you have people like in this day and time talking about reverse mortgaging, because a reverse mortgage will pay you money and you sign your house over to this company. They're going to give you the money up front or in increments on a monthly basis. And then at the end of a specific time, you have two options. You can either sell a house and make whatever profit you can from the difference of what you owe the company, or you could just give it to them and be done with it. But I think what Miss Courtney is doing is something that is going to take on some different ways for people to look at having ownership in property. And I'm sure that if you can negotiate, because just like with a car, I think a car, maybe a boat, and a house are three of the most negotiable things you'll ever purchase in your lifetime. If you can negotiate something better than this lease option for this property, then I'm sure she would be more than open to having a discussion for negotiation. It doesn't mean it's going to work, but Ronaldine, if you had a business and I wanted to do something different, I would just ask, can we sit down and have a discussion about it, and we talk about some negotiations, and let's see where we can meet in the middle. You want this, I want that. Let's see where we can get in the middle and make it a win-win for both of us. And I think Miss Courtney is doing the same thing, and I applaud her for being a community or residential or developer to have her own community that she's developing, her types of homes, what she wants in the homes, who's going to build them, how it's going to be landscape, all these things. She makes the call, she calls the shots, and I think that's a phenomenal thing. So I look forward to perhaps maybe some other entrepreneurs doing similar things to her in other parts of the country, or she can help uh, and underwrite somebody, or just bring her acumens to do this in communities that are in need, especially in Black communities, and make this something possible for Black people to own and have homes in nice communities. Now, I will say there's one thing, Ronleen, that we must keep in mind, that when you own a home, when you own a home, you must, in order for things to escalate in value, you must keep that property up. That means keeping the yard cut, keeping the house painted, keeping the roof, keep it up, because if not, the home value, your home value could cause the home value in your communities to start going down. And once that starts going down, everybody's losing money. So let's get the home, keep it up, keep it, in good shape, so that the next person getting it uh, can give you as much, or pay you as much as you're requiring. But we must take care of our property. And I think you like myself, grew up in a home where your parents taught you to take care of your things. If you take care of your things will take care of you.
That
And when
is
you don't do that, you know, when you don't do that, you don't take care of your car. You just drive it and drive it and drive it. You don't wash it. You don't put oil in it. You don't change the tire. Man, that car gonna let you down. And when it
yes,
lets you down, it's gonna cost a lot more to fix it than for
yeah,
you to keep it up.
that's true. That's true.
So there was one other, and I'm gonna touch on this very briefly. There was one other female entrepreneur who's in the home business that I found this very interesting, and you might want to look at what she's doing when we get off the show today. But her name is Tamika Sherry Bond. She is founder and CEO of Bond Containers, and she is building homes out of containers that you see on these ships. They're taking containers now and turning them into either apartments. She's turning them into homes. She's connecting them and making them homes. And it says she is the first ever Black woman's owned self-sustainable container home manufacturing facility. So that means not only is she putting these homes in place, but she's building them, and then you can take them in like a jigsaw puzzle or a mobile home. You get two sides of a mobile home and put them together to make one. She's taking these containers that you see come over on ships and building communities. And I know at Fisk University, they're taking this same concept of these containers and making residences for students to live in on that campus. So it's big enough for one person to live in, have a kitchen, a living space, a sleeping space, and a bathroom, all in that container. And the way they're laying them out, they lay them out on their each individual plot of space. And it's kind of the wave. I have a friend that I know, he's into that same type of business. So you see all these containers sitting around sometime, folks are turning that into housing.
Yes, into homes. I also saw where they did the same thing with the old aircraft. So luxury.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. So if you're listening or watching, go to Bond Containers, look at what this lady is doing. And as you start looking at housing, and what would be a better way for there to take care of some of the homeless communities in our cities than to build container homes or container situations for the homeless people. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm sure there's a way to do it, and they're stackable. They can be stacked up. I mean, so it's ways to do it. It's just the desire of someone to want to put these things in place. So, Tamika Sherry Bond, CEO of Bond Containers, she's building container communities from the containers that you see being shipped on, put on ships and shipped from across the ocean or you see them on the back of trucks, or you see them on trains, but they're taking those metal containers and she's turning them into residential areas, and some colleges are doing the same thing. And this is probably going to be a new wave of the future for building residential facilities.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that to the light. It's been going on for about 7 years now that I've heard about it. And it's
And one final thing, Ronline, it says these container homes can be put together and erected and ready to move in within 3 to 4 weeks.
yes.
3 to 4 weeks, boom. So once the template is in place, you get the container, you clean it up, sanitize it, boom, you put it in place, and then you have the companies to go on the inside and do what they do. And the next thing you know, bam, there you have your own living quarters, living space, your own home. So Tamika Sherry Bond and Pam Brown Courtney, the Kitchings Table salute you, young ladies, for your ingenuity, for your inventiveness, and seeing a better way for the future.
Thank you.
Well, Ronline, I guess that's going to about do it for us today.
Yes. Thank you so much for those ladies bringing them, because, like I said, it was a pleasure to be able to listen to that audio.
Very good. So that's going to do it for us today here at the Kitchings Table, seen and heard every Tuesday on WBISLP, Awesome Radio 106.9 FM. Catch us on social media platforms at Roku, GPAC23, especially on Facebook Live and YouTube. Well, until next week, I'm Earl Kitchings for Ron Lee Kennedy saying, hey, go out and do something better for someone else today. Hope you have a great week. See you next time.